Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ballet Rain. So many of you who watched our Swan Lake Insights video that we posted some time ago gave us such nice feedback on it. We got a lot of comments saying that people wanted to go see Swan Lake now, and that's crazy to me, and that's super really exciting. Great. Also, a lot of you asked if we could do more videos on other ballets. So recently we put out a poll on our community tab asking which ballet you would like for us to talk about next. It was like 75% of you wanted Giselle. We're going to be diving really deep today, so strap on your scuba gear, buckle up, get yourself some tea or something else to drink. Let us know in the comments what your beverage of choice is. Are you a coffee or a tea person? Yeah, we're tea people, so. If you're ready, tap the like button and let's get into it. Giselle is one of the oldest ballets that is still performed today, and I think it really changed a lot about ballet as we know it, and it was one of the first of its kind at the time. Originally titled Giselle or Les Willies, but today we refer to it as Giselle. For context, in 1832, the ballet La Sylphide premiered at the Paris Opera Ballet with Marie Taglioni in the principal role. La Sylphide sparked the beginning of the Romantic era of ballet. The Romantic era was characterized by the rise in popularity of the ballerina, since prior to this era, male dancers were more prominent. Marie Taglioni became the epitome of the Romantic ballerina in her debut of La Sylphide, being the first ballerina to dance on point and known for her soft, lyrical style of dancing. And that takes us to this guy. His name is...
Théophile Gautier.
He is the one who would go on to write the plot for the ballet Giselle. He had attended a performance of La Sylphide around 10 years before and was deeply inspired by the ballet. The influence that La Sylphide had on Gautier can be seen in Giselle, in the concept, theme, and also the overall aesthetic. Gautier also drew inspiration for Giselle from Heinrich Heine's story De l'Allemagne, particularly the part describing the Willies, which are, in essence, the spirits of young girls who died after being betrayed by their lovers before their wedding day. Gautier loved the idea of these beautiful yet vengeful ethereal beings, thinking that they would make a pretty ballet. Basically, he did it for the aesthetic. Regarding Giselle herself, Gautier took inspiration from Victor Hugo's Phantoms, which was about a beautiful Spanish girl who loved to dance, but then she becomes too warm at a ball and then dies of a chill. That's how the character of Giselle came about. Prior to Giselle, Gautier actually had no experience writing ballet librettos, which is the storyline or the plot of the ballet, but he really wanted to create this ballet from which he drew so much inspiration from all of these narratives that were around at the time. So he tried numerous times to come up with a compelling story, but time after time, he still was not satisfied with the story. He knew he needed help, serious help, if he ever wanted this ballet to really take off. So he called upon another guy to help him, and this guy's name was Verneuil. They're killing us with these names over here. Verneuil de Saint-Georges. That's as good as I'm gonna get. St. Georges loved the original inspiration for Giselle with the idea of a beautiful and frail young girl, and also the Willies described in Heinrich Heine's story. So he took all of those concepts into account while creating the final story of Giselle, which he pulled off in a breathtaking 3 days. Meanwhile, there was a new star rising at the Paris Opera Ballet, and that was the ballerina Carlotta Grisi. She was incredibly well known at this time. Her director, Léon Pillet, sorry, one more time. Léon Pillet was looking for an opportunity to sort of present her to the public and get her out there. Gautier and St. Georges presented the finished story of Giselle to Léon Pillet. Pillet was very excited, and construction on Giselle immediately began. Jules Perrault and Jean Corali were commissioned to choreograph the ballet Giselle, with Perrault undertaking the duty of choreographing the principal and soloist roles, and Corali to choreograph the corps de ballet. Perrault and Grisi were lovers, which is why Perrault was so involved with all of her choreography and pantomime. Apparently, Perrault wanted to add some dramatic effects to the ballet and planned for some flight scenes involving the dancers hanging from aerial wires. Grisi was hesitant to be the first to try this daring feat, so a stagehand was volunteered to test them first. He crash-landed into the scenery and face-planted on the stage. The flights were cut. In the 19th and 20th century, Marius Petipa, you'll know him from our Swan Lake video, undertook the task of revising Giselle. That is the Giselle that we know and perform in this day and age. The musical score for Giselle was composed by Adolphe Adam. As you'll recall from our Swan Lake video, Adolphe Adam's score for Giselle uses the leitmotif technique. The leitmotif, if you don't know, is basically the concept of taking a musical motif and assigning it to a certain mood or character in the ballet to kind of help move the plot along and help the audience understand and connect better with the ballet. Giselle particularly is full of really brilliant and really memorable leitmotifs, so much so that even the great composer Tchaikovsky drew inspiration from Giselle before beginning his work on Swan Lake. Giselle did premiere on June 28, 1841 with Carlotta Grisi as the sweet peasant girl Giselle and Lucien Petipa, Marius Petipa's brother, as her lover Albrect. Giselle was a tremendous success, and Carlotta Grisi was praised as the next Marie Taglioni, who was the greatest ballerina of their time. So that was some of the history behind Giselle. If you are still here, thank you. Now let's go right into the plot of the ballet. The ballet is set in the Rhineland in the Middle Ages, just at the end of the grape harvest. As the ballet opens, the first main character that we come across is named Hilarion. He is rather fond of Giselle, and so he treats her and her mother very kindly in hopes of winning Giselle's hand. Second appearance is our male protagonist, Count Albrect, also sometimes called Duke Albrect, and in the original, he was called Duke Albert. In any case, his entrance into the village is marked with this bold, triumphant, kind of flashy theme as he charges into the scene with the hopes of meeting Giselle. He's disguised himself in peasant's clothes and has given himself the name Loys in hopes of hiding his nobility from Giselle and the other villagers. He gives his noble articles, such as his sword and his cloak, to his servant to hide away in his cottage. As he approaches Giselle's house, the big, noble-sounding music slowly gets softer and humbler as he begins to put on his peasant persona in preparation to call upon Giselle. After disposing of his servant, Albrect knocks on the door of the cottage and then hides to observe Giselle in secret. Giselle's first entrance really portrays her innocence and her joy. She's a young woman and she loves life and she loves to dance, which we can really see in the light, youthful allegro and then the delighted mime that she does in her opening solo. So Giselle is both excited and a little bit confused as to who just knocked on her door. But supposing it to be Loys, who is really Count Albrect, she begins to rehearse within herself what she might do or say to him. Introverts can relate. If you listen to the music, you can really hear Giselle's inner dialogue voicing both her voice and also the voice of Loys and how they might be interacting in this imaginary scenario. The higher strings represent her own voice in this scenario, and the lower strings represent Loys and what she supposes he might say in response. And at this opportune time, Albrect pops out of his hiding place, catching her by surprise. The quiet melody that follows depicts sort of the playful and slightly bashful dialogue that's happening between the characters. The way each phrase sort of echoes itself really beautifully illustrates the banter and the back and forth that they're having, and for a moment it really feels like we're actually hearing them speak. At first, Giselle is quite bashful and a trifle embarrassed, as anyone might be after your crush just pops out of nowhere as you're rehearsing what you might say to him. She tries vainly to run home, but to Albrecht's persistence, she stays. Albrect professes his love for her and swears it with an oath, but Giselle rebukes him, saying that to swear is bad luck, and insists that a daisy is a much more reputable method for proving his love. Giselle begins to count off, "He loves me," and "He loves me not" on the daisy, and as she counts the remaining petals, she finds that the last one lands on "He loves me not." For a moment, she is crestfallen, and she stands up to leave, but Albrect, determined not to end the relationship due to the prophetic abilities of a mere plant, picks up the dropped flower, pulls off one petal, and convinces Giselle that she miscounted. Giselle, being rather naive as she is, believes him wholeheartedly, and for a time they dance together. Hilarion sees the couple dancing, and he jealously confronts Giselle. He professes his love for her, but Giselle refuses him again and again. Hilarion then turns on Albrect, and in a moment of rage, pulls out his dagger. Things escalate pretty quick in ballet. Albrect reaches for his sword instinctively, before remembering that said sword is hidden away in his cottage, and furthermore, that no one is even supposed to know he possesses such a sword. Hilarion, however, picks up on this detail, and his suspicions begin to rise regarding Loys' true identity. As Albrect's nobility begins to shine through a little bit more as he commands Hilarion to leave, Hilarion's suspicions only increase.
The music in this section is particularly brilliant, as it really sounds like an argument that is happening between the characters. Interestingly enough, this segment of the music with Albrect and Hilarion kind of arguing roughly alludes to Beethoven's Fifth Symphony.
That is really interesting.
Isn't that?
But I can kind of hear it. We should play it for
We'll
them.
play it for the people though.
As Hilarion leaves, the rest of the townsfolk enter the scene, having just brought in the grape harvest. Giselle leads the girls in a dance, and she asks Albrect to join her. He protests with the excuse that he can't dance, but Giselle takes him by the hand and begins to teach him step by step.
As the dance reaches its climax, we begin to see the effects of Giselle's frail health. She becomes faint, and Albrect implores her to sit down and have a rest. She does, only for a moment though, until her passion for dance overcomes her entirely, and then she rejoins the group just before the dance closes. Her mother, Berthe, hears all the commotion outside the cottage and comes dashing out to see what's going on. She knows Giselle has clearly been dancing, and she takes her aside and scolds her for threatening her health. She warns Giselle, and all the other townsfolk present, with a tale of the Willies.
Through mime, she begins to describe the wheelies to Giselle and the townsfolk, alluding to the veils that they wear, the way they fly through the forest, and the way they dance men to their death. As she's describing them, you can hear these fleeting notes throughout. I believe it's played on the flute, and it really invokes the feeling of a ghost in flight. In the end, she begs Giselle not to dance again, lest she die and join the wheelies in her death.
Giselle comforts her mother, and she tries to lighten the mood by introducing her to Loys, her new beau, but her mother responds with the balletic equivalent of, "That's nice, hun," and promptly escorts her back home to the cottage.
Albrect also leaves, and as the scene clears, Hilarion re-enters the scene, determined to find out Loys' true identity. He approaches Albrecht's cottage and breaks in to investigate. Just as he does so, the trumpeting sound of the noble hunting party resounds throughout the forest. All the townsfolk flock to the scene to witness the entrance of the nobility. The finest of them all is Bathilde, accompanied by her father. She is Count Albrecht's betrothed, but neither she nor any of the others know about Albrecht's double life, save for Albrect himself. A servant called upon Giselle and her mother to serve the nobles and refresh them after their long hunting trip, which is a great honor.
As Giselle serves Bathilde, she admires the imperial train of the countess's skirt. And while Bathilde is unaware, Giselle quietly stoops to stroke and admire the beautiful fabrics.
Bathilde takes notice at once and addresses her. Giselle sheepishly admits her actions, but Bathilde is quite flattered. She likes being admired, and she is quickly charmed by Giselle. To Bathilde's asking, Giselle introduces herself and tells her that she loves to dance, proving this point by dancing in a little circle around the countess. This is portrayed with the same waltz theme as earlier, and also with the same accompanying steps, connecting those 2 points in the ballet.
Bathilde is impressed by her dancing, but then beckons to her to ask a confidential question, that is, whether or not she has a lover. Giselle joyfully confirms, saying that she does indeed have a fiancé, and she searches the crowds to find Loys. However, she finds that Loys has strangely disappeared, so she returns to Bathilde, assuring her that he does indeed exist, but he just isn't here just now. Bathilde, in return, shares that she also is betrothed, but neither of them suspect that both of their intendeds are the same Count Albrect.
Bathilde, by this time, is far beyond pleased with Giselle, and so she goes to her father, asking for a fitting way to show honor to Giselle. Her father suggests that perhaps Bathilde give Giselle the jeweled necklace she is currently wearing, and Bathilde is more than happy to agree. She calls for Giselle, who obediently comes, and she places the jeweled necklace around her neck.
Giselle is enthralled and thanks Bathilde earnestly before running to show the necklace to her mother and all her friends, and really anybody who'd be willing to listen.
To show her thanks, she gathers a couple and presents them to the countess, saying that they will dance for her amusement. This is the peasant pas de deux, and it wasn't always in the original ballet. Funny story, actually. I believe it came about from one dancer who was probably a little salty that she didn't get the main role, and she wanted her own star moment. I believe she had connections, and so they were willing willing to make it happen for her. I'm not sure if it's the most honest way to go about it, but that's how the peasant pas came about. It's a really, really sweet pas de deux, and it's an iconic part of the ballet today. After applauding the performers, Bathilde and her father retire to Giselle's cottage, and the villagers begin to leave the scene.
Here, Hilarion emerges from Albrect, or Loys' cottage, with an important discovery. His suspicions of Albrect's facade have been confirmed with the findings of a nobleman's cloak and sword, which are not at all found amongst peasants.
Hilarion knows that Giselle and Loys cannot be together due to the difference in social class, and out of his love for Giselle, he seeks for an opportunity to tell her the truth. Although, in some versions, he is merely a bitter, jealous rival who is looking for a way to expose Albrect publicly. But at the sound of the harvesters returning with celebratory songs, he decides that it is probably best to keep quiet for a little longer.
The harvest celebrations culminate when the villagers call Giselle out of her cottage and crown her the queen of the harvest. Though she was too weak to participate in the sowing and the harvesting herself, she was beloved by all the villagers for her kind-heartedness and was bestowed this honor nonetheless. Since she had just received the honor of being crowned queen of the harvest, Giselle implores her mother to please let her dance for all the townsfolk who are gathered there. And after some coaxing, her mother finally relents because it is a special occasion and she wants Giselle to have a good time.
And this leads into the famous Giselle variation. Now, the location of this variation within the ballet changes from production to production. Sometimes she will perform the variation directly after receiving the necklace from Bathilde, and she'll perform it as a gift of thanks. Sometimes she will present the peasant pas de deux to Bathilde first, and then she'll do her variation. Sometimes she'll perform it for the townsfolk in celebration of the harvest, as we're illustrating here.
The dainty footwork and turns in Giselle's famous variation are a reflection of Giselle's humble demeanor and character. She isn't the type to dance for sake of showing off or to gain praise from anybody else, but she dances out of joy and love and appreciation for everything in life. Artistry and character development is at utmost important when carrying the role of Giselle, in contrast to a more so technical role, like Aurora from The Sleeping Beauty.
Since the ballet Giselle features a real girl in the real world, the artistry and character portrayal of Giselle and the technicality of the steps need to merge together as one, for every step the ballerina performs, in order to draw the audience in to the story and make it feel like real life.
Giselle is particularly happy in this part of the ballet because her mother has given her permission to dance to her heart's content. She dances again with Loys and again with the other villagers, but all this while Hilarion is watching quietly. By and by, he feels that he can no longer hold his newfound truth to himself for a moment longer. He separates the couple with a shove and bows mockingly to Albrect.
Giselle, confused, asks Hilarion what he means by his sarcastic gestures, and to that, Hilarion does nothing but run to collect his findings. Giselle, meanwhile, runs to Loys to be comforted, where Loys assures her that Hilarion is completely out of his mind and reaffirms his love for her. He embraces Giselle, but Hilarion returns with the nobleman's sword he found in Albrect's cottage and puts it between the couple, separating them.
Giselle demands an explanation from Hilarion, and he tells her that this nobleman's sword belongs to Loys, and that he isn't the peasant that he's been making himself up to be all this time.
Hilarion sounds the hunting horn, which he also found in Albrect's cottage, and to the call, all the noblemen come quickly to the scene, including Bathilde and her father from Giselle's cottage.
Albrect is frozen in fear and wishes with all his heart that there was some way out of this predicament, but with all the noblemen returning to the scene, he has no choice but to calmly square his shoulders and reassume the air of the Count Albrect that he really is.
Bathilde confronts Albrect and laughingly questions his choice of commoner's attire, to which Albrect nonchalantly replies that he wasn't sure what he was thinking as he was getting ready that morning. He then bows and cordially greets her as his fiancée.
Giselle, who had been watching this whole exchange unfold before her eyes, is suddenly overcome by her shock and rushes in between the couple. Conflicted on balancing her respect towards the Countess with her unmeasured desperation, she tries to tell Bathilde that Loys is her betrothed. But Bathilde laughs at her foolish talk, assuring her that his name is Count Albrect, not Loys, and that he is indeed her fiancé. Giselle is still in denial and rushes to Loys to be comforted and assured of his true love for her, but this time he can't look her in the eyes or even face her. In that moment, the truth hits Giselle harder than she can bear, and she flies into a state of madness, tearing the Countess's necklace from her neck and falling to the ground.
Giselle's mother tries to soothe her, but not knowing the extent of the damages Albrect has caused her. As Giselle slowly gets up off the ground, there is a different look in her eyes, which becomes alarming to her mother and also to the onlookers. At this point in the story, Giselle can hardly see or hear anything around her except for vivid memories of herself and Loys.
She remembers the time Albrect swore his love to her by lifting his hand in oath, and she remembers the daisy on which she counted "He loves me and he loves me not." Those last words pierce her heart, and her imagination vanishes into reality.
This whole segment of the ballet, the mad scene as it is called, is full of leitmotifs, both in the musical score and in the choreography, which so clearly depicts Giselle's full train of thought as she brings those previous moments in the ballet to the audience remembrance, as well as hers.
As she stumbles over Albrecht's sword, she picks it up and attempts to do away with herself. But someone, usually Albrect or Hilarion, wrenches the sword from her grip just in the nick of time. Giselle laughs at him deliriously, but as she turns, her eyes meet Bathilda's, and she falls to the ground again in horror.
Giselle's mother tries to get her to come inside and rest, but Giselle cannot hear her amid the song from the harvest celebration playing in her head. Suddenly, something flying overhead catches Giselle's eye, and she rushes over to take a better look. Her mother is terrified, certain that Giselle is seeing the wheelies. Again, you can hear those fleeting notes played on the flute as Giselle looks out into the dark of the audience to see where it came from.
More memories of her dance with Albrect flood her mind, and the previous footwork begin to take control of her feet, but this time in a very choppy and ungraceful manner. She begins to dance wilder and wilder, but she suddenly stops as a sharp pain seizes her chest. Her heart is beginning to fail. She feels a sudden chill sweep over her body, and she rushes desperately through the crowds, not recognizing a single one.
At last, Hilarion manages to restrain her and ease her out of her mad state, just enough for her to recognize him. He points to her mother, whose arms are outstretched to her, and Giselle rushes into her embrace.
She turns to see Loys, whose arms are also outstretched to her, and I think in this point in the ballet he would be willing to give up his noble ranks to be with her and save her life. Giselle breaks away from her mother and rushes towards Loys, and for a moment we and everybody on the stage, as you can tell by their expressions, believe that Giselle is going to be okay and recover and soon return to normal. But just as she reaches him, her body goes completely limp. Albrect gently lowers Giselle's body to the ground and attempts to wake her, thinking that she has only fainted. But Giselle doesn't respond, and Albrect and all the onlookers quickly realize that she has died.
Panic seizes the village, and Giselle's mother pushes Albrect aside to mourn over the loss of her daughter. Albrect blames Hilarion for Giselle's death, but Hilarion points out that it is Albrect's deception that ultimately brought Giselle to her demise. Albrect knows this is true, but there is nothing more he can do now other than grieve the loss of his true love and the love of all the village.
In some productions, Albrect is forced out of the village never to return, and in others, he remains weeping over Giselle's body until the curtain closes.
But either way, the closing of Act 1 always ends with a tragic picture on the stage and musical accompaniment that represents the whole town in a state of mourning.
So that was Act 1 of Giselle, and as you can see, that mad scene is really what bridges the gap between the beginning of Act 1, which is so full of life, and then Act 2, as you'll see in a moment, is completely dead. It's really ethereal, ghostly, and kind of eerie in a way. And the mad scene is really what brings those two together to form one ballet. Because if you just watch Act 1 and then you watch Act 2, it's like completely different ballets. Like a totally different style, different way of movement. It's like totally disassociated, but that mad scene in the middle is really what brings those two together. And that contrast is what really puts us on that emotional roller coaster of the highest highs and then the lowest lows, and then we come up again in the end. You'll see. Why don't we just get it into Act 2?
Why don't we? Let's do that. Giselle Act 2 opens in a forest in the dead of night. This is the place where Giselle has been laid to rest, as the madness prior to her death forbids her from being buried in a respectable cemetery. In the darkness of the set, you can't really see very much, so Adam uses the music to paint the picture of what's going on and to set the scene. Again, he brings in those fleeting notes that represent the wheelies, and in the little light that we have on the stage, you can see them flying across the stage or fading in and out of sight. The wheelies continue to appear and disappear in the background as Hilarion enters the scene, looking to mourn at Giselle's grave. When he senses these otherworldly presences, he remembers Giselle's mother's warning. He is terrified and runs off in hopes of escaping the forest before the wheelies can find him.
A single ghostly figure with a thin veil materializes in the clearing. This is Myrta, the queen of the Willies. She has risen from her grave to awaken the others and lead them into their nightly dance. Her opening variation sharply contrasts the previous act. Instead of joyful, lively dancing, Myrta is cold, ethereal, and lifeless.
Myrta holds 2 myrtle branches in her hand, which are symbolic of love, purity, and marital fidelity. These white flowers represent the wedding bouquets that the wheelies could never hold during their lifetimes. Myrta uses these branches to rouse the other wheelies and to lead them to avenge their deaths caused by their unfaithful partners. Throwing the myrtle branches to the left and right, Myrta summons the wheelies to rise from their graves. As she does, the wheelies materialize in ranks, veiled in what should have been their wedding veils, heads bowed in reverence to their queen. The position of their arms is also important to note, as it symbolizes the children that they were never able to hold during their lifetime. Myrta summons them to dance. They fill the clearing and do so with ethereal, ghastly beauty.
Then the moment has come. Giselle must rise from her grave and be initiated into the Willies' ranks. She appears at Myrta's bidding and dances for the first time, finally free from her earthly or physical boundaries.
The wheelies sense a passerby in the forest, and as quickly as they appeared, they vanish. Albrect enters the clearing, heavy with remorse, holding lilies to lay at Giselle's grave. As he kneels to weep there, he suddenly senses Giselle's presence nearby. Confused and terrified, he stands up to look for her. When he does not find her, he kneels again, distraught.
Then Giselle comes floating towards him. Her demeanor has changed from an innocent, youthful girl to an ethereal and sorrowful spirit, which is so beautifully portrayed in this pas de deux.
Here is another brilliant musical moment in the ballet, which might easily be missed. If you really listen carefully, you'll notice that this is actually the motif that is played in the he loves me not scene, and also during Giselle's flashbacks in the mad scene. Only this time, the melodic contour is actually reversed. So, in the original motif, the main melody pattern starts on a note, I believe it's B, and then it goes higher a little, and then it goes lower. Whereas in this part of the ballet, the melody starts on a note, then goes down first, then comes up a little. I always imagine this sort of reversed mirroring illustrates the fact that Giselle is meeting Albrect from the other side, no longer as a human, but as a spirit.
You can see her delicate and transparent nature by the way that she continually slips through Albrect's grasp, and also the sustained balances and bourrées she performs throughout the pas de deux. Point work is an extremely important part of every ballet, but specifically in Giselle to give the illusion of weightless spirits floating across the stage. As a matter of fact, Giselle is one of the very first full-length ballets to be performed on pointe. This and other romantic ballets such as La Solfège are really what pushed point work forward, which has since gone on to becoming synonymous with ballet itself.
This pas de deux is incredibly emotional, and it really speaks of the love Giselle has for Albrect, despite his betrayal and the sorrow he caused her, and also despite the great separation between spirit and mortal. Throughout the pas de deux, Giselle often disappears, leaving Albrect wondering if he has really truly seen Giselle, or if it is just a product of his imagination. But at last, Giselle reappears, and she scatters these white flowers over him. And I think at that moment he really realizes, because he has this tangible sign, that Giselle really has come to him.
The white flowers represent purity and also forgiveness. And that's the moment where he also realizes the extent of Giselle's love for him, that she not only loves him, but she will forgive him for everything that he has done, including her death.
As Albrect follows Giselle into the mist, a frantic Hilarion enters the clearing, being quickly surrounded by wheelies. He begs Myrta, their queen, for mercy, but her cold smile seals his fate. The wheelies begin to dance, forcing Hilarion to dance with them. And the wheelies, being spirits, never tire, but Hilarion grows more and more exhausted. He repeatedly pleads Myrta for mercy, but again and again she refuses, until finally, with a single command, the wheelies drive Hilarion into the lake to his death. The wheelies are pleased by their success, but not satisfied. Albrect is next. The wheelies drive him to their queen, where she orders him to the knee and commands him to dance. All at once, Giselle rushes to the scene to plead with Myrtha on behalf of her beloved. Myrtha refuses again, and the wheelies prepare to force Albrect to dance to his death in the same manner they did Hilarion. But Giselle rushes Albrect to her grave, where the cross at its head overpowers the wheelies. Even Myrtha cannot stand against the cross.
Myrtha is momentarily shaken, but nevertheless recovers. Craftily, she commands Giselle to dance in Albrecht's place. Giselle, begging Albrect to stay near to the cross, does so, conveying her sorrow and intercession for Albrect in what is known to be a famously difficult passage of Adagio.
As she dances, Albrect is drawn towards her, and soon he leaves his place by the cross to dance with Giselle. Apart from the cross, he is now under the control of the wheelies, who compel him to keep dancing despite his exhaustion. This section of the ballet is genuinely tiring for the danseur, as it is made up of almost exclusively big jumps and batterie. The most famous part of this section is probably the 32-count sequence of repeated entrechatsis. It's meant to illustrate the wheelies' power controlling him. He's dying of exhaustion, but he cannot stop it. They are draining his life and energy by forcing him to expend it himself.
Throughout Albrecht's torture, Giselle continually reappears to intercede for him, knowing that if she can just preserve him until dawn breaks, he will be saved. But as Albrect grows more and more weary, Giselle grows more and more desperate, longing for morning to break.
At last, Albrect falls to the ground, and the wheelies believe they have triumphed. But then faintly in the distance, one can hear the morning bells toll, and the ghostly maidens begin to fade as they are drawn back towards their graves.
Giselle lingers by Albrect and gently brings him back to consciousness as she holds him one more time. She knows she cannot stay with him, for she is being pulled back to her grave, and she knows she will never rise again to join the Willies, for she has spared a man. This is the final time she will ever see him. Albrect is free to live, and she is free to rest in peace.
Albrect tries to hold on to her, but Giselle slips away. As she sinks into her grave, she gives him a single lily. Tangible proof that she loved him even though his betrayal was the cause of her death, and tangible proof of his redemption. Alright, so that was Giselle. As you can see, we are now completely emotionally wrecked.
Tap the like button for emotional support.
Redemption stories always get me, though.
Yeah.
I think there's something so beautiful and so universal to the human experience, and there's something so touching about being forgiven and being redeemed, and I think it resonates with a lot
all
of people.
audiences.
Yeah.
A big thank you to everyone who requested this video, everyone who participated in the poll we put out. We had a lot of fun making this video. Yeah. We love doing videos like these, and we love sharing with all of you. But anyways, thank you for your feedback. We do read it, we do listen to you guys, and we love hearing from you. So please head down to the comments and let us know your favorite part about Giselle. Also, feel free to share this video with a friend, someone special, someone you love.
As always, if you like videos like these, tap the subscribe button and press the bell button to be notified when we post a new video. I think that is all from us for now.
Yes.
That is all from us for now. This is Ballet Rain signing off. Until the next video.
Bye! No tears were shed in the making of this video. Okay, maybe 1, 2.5 dozen.